My name is Sarah, I'm 42, and I discovered my husband was leading a double life when a security guard introduced me to his other wife. Before I tell you how this led to a showdown that could have ended in a messy divorce and cost him a major promotion, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It was our third wedding anniversary, a Tuesday. I remember the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, the kind of optimistic sky that makes you feel like nothing can go wrong. I'd spent the morning baking his favorite hazelnut eclairs, the ones with the dark chocolate ganache he loves, the smell of melting chocolate and toasted nuts filling our small kitchen with the scent of happier times. James had been so distant lately, a ghost in our own home, buried in his work at Ridgecrest Development, a big real estate firm downtown. He'd come home long after I'd fallen asleep, smelling of stale coffee and exhaustion, offering vague, mumbled excuses about late-night investor calls and closing a big deal. The deal was always just around the corner. I told myself it was the pressure. This promotion he was up for was huge, a senior vice president position that would change our lives. But the distance felt like more than work. It was a cold, empty space in our bed, a silence at the breakfast table that felt heavier than any argument. I thought a surprise visit, a taste of home in the middle of his stressful day, might be the spark we needed. A small, sweet gesture to remind him that we were still a we. So I put on my favorite periwinkle sundress, the one he always said made my eyes look brighter, packed the dozen eclairs into a neat little box tied with a ribbon, and drove downtown. The Ridgecrest building was one of those new, intimidating glass towers that scraped the sky, reflecting the sun with a blinding, impersonal glare. It felt cold, nothing like the warm, ambitious man I had married, the man who used to paint my name in the steam on the bathroom mirror. I walked into the vast marble lobby, my heels clicking in nervous rhythm on the polished floor. The air was chilled, sterile. It smelled of money and ambition. A security guard at the main desk, a large man with a bored expression, looked up from his monitor as I approached. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, his voice flat, uninterested. "Hi," I said, forcing a bright, confident smile I didn't feel. "I'm here to see James Ridgecrest. I'm his wife, Sarah. I have a surprise for him." The guard's expression shifted, the boredom melting away into pure confusion. He frowned, leaning forward slightly on his elbows, looking at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "I'm sorry, who did you say you were?" "Sarah Ridgecrest," I repeated, a little slower. "His wife." He tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "Ma'am, Mrs. Ridgecrest just left about 5 minutes ago." The air in my lungs turned to ice. My smile felt like a cracking mask. I'm sorry, what?" "There must be a mistake." "Mrs. Ridgecrest," he repeated, his voice now laced with a hint of suspicion, as if I were the one causing trouble. "She just walked out. The lady in the navy blazer." My head turned involuntarily, as if pulled by a string. Through the revolving glass doors, I saw her. A tall, elegant woman with dark hair pulled back in a sleek, immaculate twist, wearing a sharply tailored navy blazer and carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my car. She walked with a liquid confidence that radiated power, like she owned the very pavement she was walking on. It was Olivia, his ex-wife. The guard saw where I was looking. He nodded. "Yep, that's her," he said, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire world was tilting on its axis and threatening to shatter into a million pieces. "She's here most days. Has her own access card." I just stood there, rooted to the spot, the box of eclairs suddenly feeling foolish and heavy in my hands. He had called Olivia Mrs. Ridgecrest. The name on my driver's license, my passport, my entire identity for the last 3 years, felt like a fraud. In that gleaming, sterile lobby, I wasn't his wife. I was just an unauthorized visitor, a stranger in my own life. You have to understand, our beginning wasn't a whirlwind romance. It was steady. It was real. We met in our 30s, both a little bruised by life, both looking for something solid. We built our life brick by brick, not with grand gestures, but with quiet promises and shared dreams. The dream of this house. The dream of a family. The dream of growing old together. Now, all those bricks felt like they were turning to dust. As I drove home on autopilot, my mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, flashed back to two moments. Two conversations I had packed away in my mind that now came rushing back with terrifying clarity, replaying themselves in high definition. The first was a few years ago, a happy memory from a rainy Sunday afternoon. We were curled up on the couch, looking through old photo albums from his college days. James pointed to a faded picture of a young man with the same easy smile and kind eyes as his arm slung around James's shoulder. "This was my best friend, Ian," he'd said, a familiar touch of sadness in his voice. "We were inseparable. Pledged the same fraternity, took the same classes. People used to say we could have been brothers." I remembered tracing the faded image with my finger, thinking the resemblance was truly uncanny. A sweet, sad detail of my husband's past. A ghost I never thought I'd have to consider again. The second memory was sharper. Uglier. It was a fight, one of the worst we'd ever had, about 2 years into our marriage. James's younger cousin, a man with a history of bad decisions, had gotten into some serious gambling debt. James, ever the loyal family man, wanted to lend him a significant amount of money from our savings, money we had earmarked for a down payment on a bigger home. I, remembering my own father's struggles and how it nearly destroyed our family, put my foot down. Hard. "Absolutely not, James," I'd said, my voice colder than I intended. "We are not setting our own future on fire to enable him. We're not his personal ATM." He'd argued that family helps family. I'd countered that real help wasn't writing a check, it was getting him into counseling. The argument got heated. He accused me of being cold-hearted. I accused him of being financially reckless. He'd eventually, reluctantly, agreed with me. But something shifted between us that day. A small, invisible wall went up. I saw in his eyes a flicker of fear, or maybe it was resentment, that I could be so unyielding when it came to our finances. He never brought up a sensitive money issue with me again. I thought it meant he trusted my judgment. I never imagined it meant he was afraid of it. Now, standing in our silent apartment that night, the uneaten eclairs mocking me from the kitchen counter, those two memories played on a loop. James came home hours later, at nearly 11 p.m., giving me a quick, distracted kiss on the cheek. "Sorry, honey. The negotiations went long." "Absolutely brutal," he said, loosening his tie as he walked past me. "I think we're close, though. This deal is going to be huge." I didn't say a word about my visit. I just watched him, my heart pounding a sick, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I studied his face, looking for a sign, a flicker of guilt, anything. But he just looked tired. The man standing in front of me, the man I shared a bed with, was a complete stranger. The next day, my grief had curdled into a cold, sharp resolve. I couldn't eat, couldn't think. I called my best friend, Chloe, my voice breaking as I told her everything, the guard, Olivia, the lie. "Okay, honey, breathe," Chloe said, her voice a steady anchor in my storm. "Just take a deep breath. Are you okay?" I told her I wasn't. She listened patiently as I spilled out the whole humiliating story. "Okay," she said again after I was done. "My first instinct is to tell you to key his car and pack a bag. But that's the angry instinct. You're not just angry, Sarah, you're smart." She paused. "Your feelings are 100% valid. But don't jump to the worst-case scenario without proof. You're a researcher, Sarah. Your whole job is about finding the truth beneath the surface. Don't let emotion cloud your judgment now. Find the facts, whatever they are. Be methodical. Then you can decide if you need a lawyer." She was right. I wasn't the type to collapse into hysterics. My career as a market researcher had taught me to be patient, to look for patterns, to trust data over drama. I wouldn't be a victim in my own life. I would be an investigator. My mission was simple: find the truth, no matter how ugly. The next morning, I told James the first was meeting Chloe for an all-day spa trip, a lie that slipped off my tongue with unnerving ease. Instead, I drove back to the glass tower and parked across the street in a spot with a clear view of the entrance. My car became a makeshift surveillance van. I had a thermos of black coffee, a notebook, a pair of binoculars, and a knot of dread in my stomach that felt like a physical object. For a woman who spent her days analyzing consumer behavior, I was now analyzing the potential collapse of my own marriage. It felt surreal, watching the building where my husband built his career as if it were an enemy compound. The hours crawled by. I watched men and women in sharp suits come and go, all looking important and busy. My mind spiraled. Were they laughing about me inside? The pathetic little wife who had no idea? At 10:15 a.m., just like the day before, a silver Audi pulled into the executive parking lot. Olivia stepped out. She looked just as polished, just as perfect. She walked into the building without even pausing at the security desk, swiping her own access card with a familiar flick of her wrist. She belonged there. I spent the whole day watching, my coffee growing cold, the pastries in my bag making me feel sick. I catalogued every person who went in and out. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. A renewed affair was the simplest explanation. The more sinister one was some kind of elaborate plot to push me out so she could step back in. The thought of a divorce, of lawyers and mediators splitting up our life, our home, our future, it made me physically ill. What would happen? Would I have to move? Would I lose everything? Just after 3 p.m., Olivia walked out of the revolving doors. But she wasn't alone. A little boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, who must have been waiting for her in the lobby, ran out from behind a large potted plant near the entrance and launched himself into her arms. She swung him around, laughing, a genuine, unguarded laugh that I had never heard from her. I raised the binoculars, my hands trembling. The boy had James's dark, wavy hair. He had James's mannerisms, the way he tilted his head when he listened intently to what she was saying. And then he looked up at her and smiled. It was James's smile. A pure, unadulterated copy. It was like looking at a miniature version of my husband. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just an affair. This was a child. A secret family. The thought of a custody battle flashed through my mind, a battle I didn't even know was being fought. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold my phone steady as I followed them at a distance. They walked, hand in hand, to a small cafe a block away. I huddled in a doorway across the street, feeling like a spy in a cheap movie. I watched through the window as Olivia bought the boy a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. My grief from the day before was nothing compared to this. This was a whole new level of devastation, a betrayal so profound I couldn't even process it. I felt a hot flash of pure rage crawl up my neck. I lifted my phone, my researcher's instincts kicking in over the pain, and I zoomed in. I snapped several photos. The happy mother. The adoring son who looked just like my husband. It was my evidence. My proof. Exhibit A in the trial of my dead marriage. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity after they left, just staring at the pictures on my phone. The smiling faces felt like a personal attack. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a cold, hard fury that burned away my tears. This wasn't just a betrayal of our vows. This was a betrayal of our entire life, of every plan we'd ever made, of the future I thought we were building. The money James was supposedly earning with his long hours, was it going to them? Was our college fund for a future we might never have actually supporting the secret life? I wasn't just a fool, I had been funding my own replacement. That night, the quiet determination I felt earlier had a new, sharp edge. I would not be erased quietly. I would find out everything. Back home, I spread my evidence out on the coffee table like a detective in a crime drama. The photos. The times. The lies. It all pointed to one, simple, heartbreaking conclusion. But something was still nagging at me, a tiny, illogical detail that refused to be silenced. The memory of James showing me the picture of his late best friend, Ian. The uncanny resemblance. My rational mind told me to dismiss it. It was too much of a coincidence. My brain was just trying to protect itself from the awful truth. But my researcher's brain, the part of me that looks for anomalies, wouldn't let it go. Driven by that sliver of doubt, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened my laptop and became a digital stalker. I didn't just search for Olivia. I remembered her full name from the wedding announcements years ago, a detail I hadn't thought of in years. I searched Olivia Ridgecrest's sister. And there it was. A link to a GoFundMe page. My heart hammered against my ribs as I clicked it. The page was for a woman named Vera Landon. The photo showed a frail-looking woman with Olivia's features, but she was thin and pale, lying in a hospital bed, a weak smile on her face. The page, started by Olivia, was a desperate plea for help with overwhelming medical bills for a rare autoimmune disease that was attacking her organs. And then I scrolled down through the updates and saw the family photos. And there he was. The little boy from the cafe. His name was Max. And he was listed as Vera's son. The page mentioned he was being looked after by his Aunt Olivia while his mother was in the hospital. It also mentioned his late father. Ian Landon. Ian. The name hit me like a physical blow. James's best friend from college. The man who looked like his brother. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. It wasn't Olivia's son. It was her sister's son. And her sister had been married to James's deceased best friend. The mystery didn't get clearer, it got 10 times more complicated, a tangled web of past relationships and present secrets. Why was my husband so deeply, financially involved with his ex-wife's sick sister and her child? Why the soul-crushing secrecy? My mind spun, a whirlwind of confusion and suspicion. That night, I saw James in a different light. He wasn't just a husband who might be cheating. He was a man with a secret, and now I knew it was a big one, rooted in history and tragedy. I watched him across the dinner table, looking exhausted and stressed, and for the first time, I saw the immense weight he was carrying. He looked like a man drowning in obligations I couldn't begin to understand. I knew I had to try. I had to give him one last chance to be my husband, my partner. After dinner, as he was heading to his study, I stepped in front of him. "James," I said, my voice soft, pleading. "You've seemed so stressed lately. I'm worried about you. Is there anything I can do to help? You know you can tell me anything. We're a team." I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, a desperate need to confide, a crack in his armor, but it was extinguished as quickly as it appeared. He just shook his head, forcing a weak, tired smile. "I'm fine, Sarah. Really. Just work. This deal is a killer." He patted my hand, a gesture that was meant to be reassuring but felt dismissive. Then he retreated into his study, closing the door behind him. That closed door was the final straw. It wasn't just a door, it was a wall he had deliberately, actively put between us. His refusal to let me in, his rejection of my offer of partnership, hurt more than the suspicion of an affair. He didn't trust me. Later that night, with my heart pounding a funeral drum in my ears, I did it. I picked up his phone from the nightstand where it was charging. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely type in the passcode, our anniversary, the irony of which was a bitter pill. I went straight to his messages with Olivia. There were no love notes. No I miss yous. It was all logistics. Messages about hospital visiting hours. Links to medical articles. And then I saw the bank transfer confirmations. Thousands and thousands of dollars sent from our joint savings account. And then, the message that broke my heart into 1,000 tiny pieces. It was from Olivia. "Are you sure Sarah is okay with this? It's a lot of money, James. This could affect your own finances, your ability to get a loan for the new house. James's reply, sent just last week, no, she doesn't know. I'm not ready to explain yet. After that fight we had about my cousin, I'm afraid she'll misunderstand. I can't risk another fight like that right now. Afraid she'll misunderstand. The words echoed in the silent room. He wasn't protecting me. He was hiding from me. He didn't see me as a partner to share his burdens with, but as a problem to be managed, a potential obstacle. The memory of our fight over his cousin's debt slammed into me. This was the fallout. He had stereotyped me as cold and unyielding, and he was judging our entire marriage based on one argument from years ago. The betrayal wasn't about another woman. It was about his profound lack of faith in me, in us. And that felt infinitely worse. The next night was the annual dinner for the firm's senior partners. James was on track for that huge promotion, and this dinner was the final, unofficial interview. He needed to present himself as stable, successful, a man with a perfect life, a man you could trust with multi-million-dollar deals. Our home was the chosen venue. All day, I was a ghost, moving through the motions of preparing for the party. I arranged flowers in a crystal vase, chilled expensive wine, and set the table with our best china and silverware. But inside, I was a coiled spring of cold, quiet rage. This perfect life he was selling to his boss was a sham, built on a foundation of my ignorance and his deception. Minutes before his boss, Mr. Henderson, and his wife were due to arrive, James came into the kitchen. He was adjusting his tie in the reflection of the microwave, looking nervous but excited. How do I look? Is everything ready? This has to be perfect. I turned from the stove, wiping my hands on my apron, my face a calm mask I had practiced in the mirror. I know, James. He frowned, not really listening. Know what? That my tie is crooked? Fix it for me, will you? I know about Vera, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, cutting through his self-absorption. I know about Max. I know about Ian. I know about the money from our savings account. I saw the messages on your phone. The color drained from his face. He looked like he'd been physically struck. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Sarah. I can explain. Can you? I shot back, my voice rising, shaking with the force of my hurt and anger. Can you explain why you thought so little of me that you couldn't tell me your best friend's widow was dying? That his son, your godson, needed help? Did you think I was some kind of monster? That I wouldn't have helped? After everything we've been through, you decided it was easier to lie to my face every single day than to trust me with the truth. He flinched as if I'd slapped him, leaning back against the counter for support. It wasn't like that, he stammered, his eyes pleading. After that fight about my cousin. I couldn't face another fight about money. I was afraid you'd say no, and I couldn't let them down. After Ian's funeral, I promised him I'd always look out for them. There was no inheritance, Sarah, just debt. I was just trying to handle it. Handle it? I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You weren't handling it, James. You were hiding. You made a unilateral decision that affected our life, our savings, our future. You made me the villain in a story I didn't even know I was in. Just then, the doorbell rang. A bright, cheerful chime that cut through the toxic air in our kitchen like a surgeon's scalpel. James's face was a mess of panic and despair. His perfect night, his promotion, his carefully constructed world was about to implode. The dinner was the most excruciating 2 hours of my life. I smiled, I made small talk about the weather and the stock market, I played the part of the gracious, supportive wife. James was a wreck. He was pale, sweating, stumbling over his words. He spilled wine on the white tablecloth. Mr. Henderson, a sharp, perceptive man in his 60s, clearly noticed something was deeply wrong. Later, as I was clearing the dessert plates, I overheard Mr. Henderson talking to James quietly in the hall. James was apologizing for being off his game. Mr. Henderson's voice was low but firm. "Son, I don't know what's going on here tonight, and it's none of my business," he said. "But let me give you some advice I learned a long time ago. That woman in there," he gestured with his head towards me in the kitchen, "is the best asset you have. She held this entire evening together while you were falling apart. Whatever the problem is, she looks strong enough to handle it. Don't you ever underestimate her." It wasn't a public apology from James. But in that moment, hearing my strength validated by the very man my husband was trying so desperately to impress, it was a victory. It was the first crack of light in a long, dark tunnel. The day after the disastrous dinner party, I called Olivia. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Done with the secrets, done with the drama, done with being on the outside of my own life. I asked her to meet me at a neutral cafe, halfway between her office and my home. She walked in looking tired, her polished exterior from the other day replaced by a genuine vulnerability. She started to apologize, to explain her part in the secrecy, but I held up a hand to stop her. "I know the story, Olivia," I said calmly. "I've pieced it together. I'm not here to rehash it or to place blame. I'm here to fix it." I slid a thick folder across the table. She opened it, her eyes widening in surprise. Inside were not legal documents for a divorce, but printouts from patient advocacy groups, applications for financial aid programs, contact information for social workers who specialized in cases like Vera's, and even a list of clinical trials. James's solution, I said, my voice steady and clear, was to throw money at the problem and hide. That's not sustainable. It's a temporary patch on a massive wound, and it was destroying my marriage. This is a plan. A real one. You and your sister are not alone in this, but the solution can't be a secret that requires my husband to drain his salary and our future. We are going to handle this transparently. We are going to get Vera the institutional support she needs. I'm not the obstacle here, Olivia. I'm the person who gets things done. For the first time, she looked at me not as her ex-husband's new wife, a rival or a stranger, but as an ally. A powerful one. The conversation wasn't about boundaries anymore. It was about strategy. We spent the next hour mapping out a course of action. In that moment, I took back my power. I wasn't just a wife finding out about a secret, I was a competent, intelligent woman taking control of a crisis, using the skills I had honed my entire career to solve a real-world problem. The months that followed were a slow, careful reconstruction. It wasn't just about my marriage, it was about me. It started with a conversation, a real one, between James and me. There were tears. There were painful admissions. We laid all the cards on the table, all the fears and resentments. We agreed that there would be no more walls. Honesty, no matter how hard, was the new rule. The Sunday lunches started tentatively. The first one was awkward. Vera was there, out of the hospital for the day, looking frail but with a light in her eyes I hadn't seen in her photos. She held my hand and thanked me, tears streaming down her face. Max, a sweet, shy kid, slowly warmed up to me after I showed him I could make a paper airplane that actually flew across the entire living room. James watched me, a look of awe and profound regret on his face. He was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time in a long time. But the biggest change wasn't in my home, it was in me. The research I had done for Vera, the hours I'd spent navigating the labyrinth of the healthcare system, had ignited something within me. I was good at it. I had a knack for cutting through red tape and finding solutions people didn't even know existed. The skills I used to sell soda and soap for a living could actually change people's lives. The satisfaction I felt from helping Vera find a spot in a new clinical trial was greater than any bonus or praise I had ever received in my corporate career. So I did something I had been afraid to do for years. I took a massive leap of faith. I quit my comfortable marketing job and its predictable, high salary. I cashed in a portion of my own retirement savings and enrolled in a certification program for patient advocacy. It was terrifying and exhilarating. I was investing in myself, in my own potential. James was my biggest cheerleader. He saw the fire in my eyes and, instead of being intimidated by it, he was proud. He started being proactively honest, telling me about small work anxieties or financial concerns he would have previously hidden. He was finally treating me like a true partner. Our trust was rebuilding, not on the old, fragile ground of assumption and avoidance, but on a new, solid foundation of mutual respect and brutal honesty. It's a year later now. I'm sitting in my small home office, the one that used to be a guest room. It's filled with light, plants, and files for my clients. On my laptop screen is the website for Landon Ridgecrest Advocacy. I named it after Vera and myself, a testament to where this journey began. My first official client signed up last week, and I've already helped them successfully appeal an insurance denial. My marriage isn't a fairy tale. There are still echoes of the hurt, moments of quiet reflection where the memory of that cold lobby stings. But it's real. It's strong. And I'm not the same woman I was a year ago. I learned that the worst betrayals aren't always about love lost, sometimes they're about love hidden out of fear. And I learned that trust isn't just about believing that someone won't hurt you. It's about trusting that you're strong enough to handle the truth, no matter what it is. James walks in quietly and places a cup of tea on my desk, his hand resting on my shoulder for a moment. He looks at the open file on my desk. Changing the world, one appeal at a time, he asks, smiling. Something like that, I reply. He doesn't say anything else, but his eyes are full of a pride that feels deeper and more genuine than anything I'd seen before. He sees me not just as his wife, but as the founder of a business, as a force in my own right. He leaves me to my work. I take a sip of tea and turn back to my screen, a small, genuine smile on my face. I didn't just survive the storm. I learned how to navigate. And for the first time in a very long time, I am the captain of my own ship. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a difficult journey, but one that ultimately led me to a stronger version of myself. I'd love to know what you think. Do you believe a marriage can truly recover from a deep betrayal of trust, even when it's not about infidelity? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found my story helpful or inspiring, please give it a like and subscribe for more. It really helps the channel.